Hi, I'm John, and this is the fifth part of my analysis of Wallace Stevens' Invective against Swans. I think we've seen that in the poem, there's a tension between this idea of the soul, this concept of permanence that exists beyond the world. It is the essence, the incorruptible, the indestructible, and the transience within the world in which we live and ultimately die. We go about our lives in the world like one whiling away his time in a pleasant park, and something happens that makes us aware of time passing. But what's the difference between saying, I am like one whiling away my time in the park, and to say that I am the one whiling away my time in the park? Well, the latter is actual life, abandoning yourself to the flow of time, and to enjoy that kind of oblivion, as I said, that characterizes our moment to moment existence. Of course, abstracting that experience and expressing it in a simile is to say that we are reflecting upon the fact that we live in transience, meaning that ultimately all things pass and we die. And we're simultaneously both people. The person who is experiencing the world, who is abandoned to time, and the person who is, in a sense, suspended his stay in the world, existing outside of it, and viewing the person abandoning himself to time. Of course, the one who can do this on a consistent basis is the true artist, like Pygmalion, who attempts to preserve something of the essence of the human in the form of fashioning the beautiful statue of Galatea, but at the same time, he wants to experience the vital beauty of his own creation, to invest it with life, and to enact that life at the moment of creation. He wants to pull the soul, extract the soul from the dying world, but then call upon Aphrodite to reverse the process and reinvest the soul in the dead matter to create life again. Of course, any object created is ultimately a listless testament. It is dead because the very vital processes that created it themselves are fleeting. They end, and we are left with simply an object, which would mean that the myth of Pygmalion and Galatea is something of a happy delusion. Galatea is a statue. She really can't come to life, sadly. And sadly, ultimately, we're just things in the world being acted upon by nature, by biology, by meteorology. The speaker sees that summer is ended, the evidence being that the dynamic quality of the life of the swans is ending. They are molting, they are pulling their feathers out, they are no longer breeding, they no longer can fly. So we're powerless in two respects. We are subject to these potent desires, and yet we're also in the position simply to witness them wane and ultimately die. Perhaps then the white feathers take on another significance as a sign of the cowardice of these swans in their biological surrender. This surrender of the swans and this death of potent desire means that Artemis, the goddess of the moon, of chastity, has won. And now appears another kind of bird. Here come the crows. Behold, already on the long parades, the crows anoint the statues with their dirt. The crows would appear to be the polar opposite of the swans. They are swarming, they are coarse, they are loud, they mimic, they swarm. They are dark in color, whereas the swans are white in color. But where in the world are we at this moment? Well, the long parades, the crows, the statues. The parades and the statues suggest that we are in a park, but not just in any park. Perhaps we are in every park. This represents a situation that could be experienced anywhere. This is therefore not a particular event like the sun shower that could only be happening in a particular place. This is something that is potentially happening everywhere, in parks across the hemisphere. By moving out of a particular event, we're moving out of a particular individual's experience and into a generalization of experience. Much as crows appear to mock humans through their mimicry, the speaker is mocking the swans through behold. Clearly, this is used in a highly ironic way. Um, and he is describing in rather flowery language a rather base act. That is, the crows are depositing their excrement on statues. Much as crows appear to mock human language through mimicry, the speaker mocks the swans in the use of this dated address of behold. It's highly ironic. And to add insult to injury, what begins as a mocking, ironic rhetoric ends in the word dirt, which is a euphemism for the excrement left by the crows on the statues. A parade is a part of a park where one may walk, like an esplanade. A parade also indicates a showy display or demonstration. So clearly the crows are openly mocking this place of harmony, or these places of harmony, these parks, these parks. To anoint is to put oil upon, to mark one as the chosen one, to bless. This picks up with the prayer of Pygmalion to Aphrodite to invest life in his beloved statue. This mocks that entire myth. This also would seem to mock the entire calling of the true artist. Now, if the previous couplet indicates that Artemis has won, the presence of the crows are a way of communicating that Apollo has lost. The myth goes that once the crows were white, and the crows were in communication with Apollo. The crows one day, however, observing that his lover Corone was unfaithful to him with a human male, upon reporting the betrayal of Corone to Apollo, Apollo in his rage, burned the crows and turned them black. So if you're scoring at home, Artemis won, Apollo 0. Apollo also suffers here because the crows are defiling these parks, these places of order and harmony, and Apollo is a god associated with orderliness. Now, the individual is somewhat spared from the particular experience because this is a generalization of experience, as I said, around the world. It therefore moves us out of the world as place and into the world beyond, or what is beyond the world, rather. Appropriately, the soul returns. And the soul, O ganders, being lonely, flies beyond your chilly chariots to the skies. At first, this appears to be a kind of refrain, a reference to the opening two lines, but it's a refrain that has been greatly altered. For one, there is no more mention of the parks. Even the generalization of place has been abandoned, replaced by chilly chariots. If we recall, the chilly chariots must be referring to the swans, which are now grounded. They've molted, they're no longer capable of flight, and being on the ground, implicitly they are referring to place. So we've de-emphasized the earth, and now we have a destination for the soul. There was no destination in the beginning. We merely knew what it was flying beyond, but now we have the destination of the skies. Now, with this union of the swans and chariots, I'm strongly reminded of another myth involving another sun god, the myth of Phaeton and Cygnus. Phaeton was the son of the sun god. I believe this would have been the Titan Helios rather than Apollo. Phaeton wanted to prove to his friends that indeed the sun god was his father. He therefore asked his father to grant him a wish. His father did, and his wish was to be given the reins and to be able to ride, to drive his sun chariot. Of course, this horrified the sun god, who warned him that even Zeus would have trouble wielding the reins and the sun chariot on certain maneuvers. Of course, Phaeton was brash and insisted on having his way. Uh, the sun god relented, tried giving him tips. As soon as Phaeton took the reins, he grew panicked. The horses, of course, of the sun chariot sensed the inability of the driver to curb them, to ride them. Therefore, they took a path across the sky, at times going high above the earth, causing the earth to freeze, sometimes coming low to the ground and singeing, burning the earth. The earth cried out to Zeus to remedy the situation, and of course, Zeus assented to the wish and threw a lightning bolt, causing Phaeton to fall to the sea and die. As a result of this, his friend, his boon companion Cygnus, could not stop crying and lamenting his death. Ultimately, the gods took pity upon Cygnus and turned him into a swan. This would have been the ultimate source of the swan song that I've already alluded to in a previous video. By turning him into a swan, uh, he was transformed by one who could not stop crying. By the way, Cygnus was a wonderful singer, to a creature that never sang at all. In fact, that only sang upon its death. The sun god in sadness could not take the reins of his own sun chariot for a time, and Cygnus's lamentation was so great that he had to be transformed into a swan. There's an enormous concentration of suffering here, which contrasts to the chilliness of these swans that have already given up biologically, so to speak. And just as death is implicit to this use of chilly chariots, um, death is implicit to the soul. We only mention the soul implicitly in the context of death. Now, although all things pass in place, any place is a marking of a transience. Cygnus resisted that and would have lamented till he himself expired. In other words, he would not have simply surrendered himself to life and the moment-to-moment existence of oblivion and forgetting. Death, or the awareness of death, necessarily takes us out of the world, because in the world, we simply succumb to passage, and we dissolve into it, as I said, in an oblivion. Thankfully, we do, for we can't, like Cygnus, lament forever. We must, as we say, get on with our lives. But part of our nature is to remove ourselves from the place of passage and to move ourselves beyond the world into this rather abstract realm. In the world, you could say we endure until passage occurs. Outside of the world, we memorialize with the abstract aim of having something persist and to become eternal. And I find this too tantalizingly suggestive to pass up. The word skies is used. The plural, I feel, is often used to resist reference to any particular. If he had said to the sky, of course, is a god, the god Uranus. And just as the earth cried out to Zeus to spare her from Phaeton, the earth, in a different myth, cried out to Cronus to save her from the ravages of Uranus. As the myth goes, Cronus castrated Uranus and cast his genitals into the sea, from which Aphrodite was born. It's argued that Cronus is time itself, and Cronus, through his act, separates sky from earth and allows time to occur, for events to happen. It's also in resistance to this instinct for eternity and memorialization, which resists the passage of time. In closing, I might argue that the invective against Swans is the struggle of the rhetorician against the rhetoric that traps him. The Swans, as a feature of rhetoric, symbolize that mass of myths and illusions that the rhetorician has at his disposal, all of that, let's say, dead knowledge, that past, which is endlessly brought forward. But this traps him in rhetoric, as I said, and estranges him from life. And therefore, the biological swan, in its sexual wantonness, provides a kind of resistance, a rebellion against this trap. Perhaps it's the tension of the biological swan with the rhetorical swan that represents the bind that we and the artist find ourselves in. And with that, I can say, phew, finally, I've come to an end, and I think I've wrapped it up, I would argue, successfully. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in another video.